Good afternoon. My name is Niko House, host of the political radio show Mika Says Sukas, which you can catch here on YouTube, on Facebook Live, awakeradio.us, or iHeartRadio's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today, I wanted to talk about the interesting conversation that Perez had with America, and then the conversation that he tried to pretend he did not have with America. And some of you may know what I'm referring to, and others of you may not. But Perez, candidate for the DNC chair position, has said that the Democratic Party was rigged, or the primary was rigged, which is true. We know this. Specifically, Bernie supporters know this, and he even went out of his way to say that the Bernie supporters were right for feeling the way that they did about the Democratic primary. I mean, of course, I don't understand why this is even a discussion. WikiLeaks made it blatantly clear that it was rigged. If it was not rigged, why would Debbie Wasserman Schultz be fired? Right? If it was not rigged as far as the media is concerned, why were people like Donna Brazile let go? Why was Hillary Clinton's campaign making phone calls to MSNBC, Morning Joe, trying to get people fired? You know, things like that. So it was obvious, right? So many of us feel like this shouldn't even be a debate anymore. However, within the race of the DNC chairperson position, it has constantly been a debate and been a point of contention. And it's worrisome because Perez then, later on that night, several hours later, didn't even give himself a 24-hour turnover, decided to tweet that he misspoke and that that Hillary Clinton won fair and square, although Debbie Wasserman Schultz was fired for cheating. So we know it was rigged. For all intents and purposes, all the information is there, so it's not like people don't know. Even the people who are Hillary supporters have admitted that it was rigged. They just tell us to move on, but they still admit that it was rigged. And we know that the DNC is in the middle of a lawsuit. And actually, one of their points of contention in that lawsuit, in case you didn't know, which is a lawsuit that's being held by Beckinley Law Firm out here in South Florida, was that they already knew, literally they said they already knew that it was rigged, and we should have all known as well. So we also need to be very clear, though, however, that the reason that Perez could have retracted his statements was because it could have been because DNC attorneys might have called and said, hey, we need you to not admit this was rigged because eventually you're going to be called. You perhaps may be called to defend Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the prior DNC group. And if you just admitted that, yes, it was rigged, that's going to be a little hard to, retract later in a court trial when you have to put your right hand on the Bible. So that's a possibility. But nonetheless, Perez then reneged his statement. As most of you who are Bernie supporters have decided to put your weight behind Keith Ellison, and he's an okay guy. He has some tendencies that I do not like. I don't actually know his intentions. I had no idea who he was prior to this election. And the unfortunate truth of the matter is, I have working in Bernie Sanders' party officially and unofficially afterwards. I've seen people use Bernie Sanders' name to try and gain power. I've seen people try to use the influence of the revolution for selfish interests when they actually have no care in the world for the interests of the well-being of the progressive community in the United States in general. So Keith Ellison, there are a few people who've separated, who separated themselves from that in my eyes. That would be Tulsi Gabbard, who, she switched over at a very key moment, a very pivotal moment in her career in general. You have people like, the list really goes on, but there's a lot, Nina Turner, a lot of people who were hurt by the DNC because they switched over. But Keith Ellison has not really, in my opinion, separated himself. And this is why. Because Nina Turner can admit it's rigged. Tulsi Gabbard can admit it's rigged. And Keith Ellison has not. And I've heard a lot of reasons as to why he won't admit it's rigged. People say it's because, the delegates that are voting that he has to bring over don't want him to admit it. The same thing with Perez. And That's a noble gesture. But then we get to the conclusion that the Democratic Party at that point should be extremely worried, because that means they are screwed beyond repair. And as an advocate of democracy in all forms, whether it be Republican, Democratic, Green Party, Independent, whatever, I don't want to see any party screwed to the extent where they can't admit an obvious truism that everyone has agreed upon, including members of that party, to the point where they fired the person who initiated the rigging and carried it out. If you can't acknowledge that, and you won't get elected for acknowledging something that has been proven unequivocally true, unquestionably true, then obviously the power in that party is much too concentrated. And you have to then wonder going forward, how can this person, if Keith Ellison does turn out to be progressive, exactly how can he make any necessary changes? Exactly how could he influence the election in a way that could give Bernie Sanders or progressives in general a larger, more powerful voice? More importantly, how do we know that he won't be suppressed? How do we know that he can't be manipulated? And because obviously the establishment is that strong that they can literally have someone admit, I mean, he didn't misspoke, because he said Bernie supporters, Perez specifically said Bernie supporters feel this way. They have the right to feel this way. It was absolutely rigged. And then says, nah, I misspoke. It was actually absolutely 100% legitimate. That's scary. That somebody can do a complete 180 in less than 4 hours. So obviously the concentration of power in the DNC it may be too much to overcome for either Keith Ellison or Perez, no matter how you feel about either of them. Perez actually gained a notch for me, because for him to be willing to do that, at least at minimum, lets me know that he'll put his neck out there, in a sense, even when it's unpopular to his own people, and that he may have some sensibility, even though he is part of the Clinton establishment. Keith Ellison, really up until recently, wasn't too far from the Clinton establishment also. But being a black man in the Bernie movement, it turns out to be very, very beneficial for you, especially if you have presidential aspirations later on down the line. So this is the issue that we have, though. Because of leadership like this, because of the reality of the delegate situation and how they elect their leadership, because of the power of superdelegates, because of the concentrated power within the states, people do not believe in the Democratic Party, and they don't believe that the Democratic Party can be reformed. Now, there is a movement called Dementer, and TYT is starting another movement called Justice Democrats, which I will address in another video. But they're starting, but there are people who say that they want to reform the Democratic Party from the inside. And like I said, I'm an advocate for democracy. I completely understand why Dementer is absolutely necessary, because it is. We don't want any party that corrupt and that powerful, because just completely overrun by just illegitimate leadership. And same reason I wouldn't want the Republican Party to be that way, and I wouldn't want the Green Party to be that way either. But I do understand why people would want to initiate Dementer and why they would want to participate in it. But the issue then becomes, I took a poll, and for those of you who don't know, my page, I was executive board, or actually technically still am, but an executive board member of Burn Your Bus, which is now Revolt Against Plutocracy. And my page is primarily made up of those people who left. It was 20% of the Democratic Party. I took a poll, 119 people, and these are 119. It's still counting, but from when I last took it, was 119 people. And these are people who that you want to win, that you need to bring back into the Democratic Party. Out of all 119 people, none of them, except for 3 who are actually currently still members of the Democratic Party, said that they would rejoin the Democratic Party through Dementer. They don't believe in Dementer's ability to influence elections. They don't believe in the Dementer's ability to change the corrupt Democratic Party. And whether or not that is true or not is almost inconsequential, because it's all about perception and intention and how it is being perceived from all sides. I don't care what party you're part of. How it is being perceived is the Democratic Party is the few people who control the Democratic Party are much too powerful to get out of power. And if these are the people that are voting power in, it's going to be hard to push them out. So it's disheartening, and it should scare the hell out of the Democratic Party if Keith Ellison and Perez can't admit something so simple, but yet they want people to participate in Dementor. If you're a Dementor person, how can you say, hey, you should come over, we can retake the party? But it's like, wow, they can't even say that the situation was rigged to begin with. So what's the point of me participating? And yeah, you can go out and droves and numbers, and we can play the numbers game, and that's extremely important. But what we also have to remember is the Democratic Party, it's very savvy, and they will manipulate. They will manipulate rules. They will manipulate committee meetings. They will manipulate a lot. And it gets to the point where it's just simply exhausting after a while, and people just believe whatever, it's better off for me to just start my own party, or join the Green Party, or join the Libertarian Party. So they should be absolutely worried. 2018 is coming up very shortly, and nobody wants to see Republicans out of power right now more than I do, given what we've been seeing from them. But the Democratic Party is going to have a lot of trouble if they do not get their act together. And there are several ways to do that, which I will address also in the Justice Democrats video. But first, we have to acknowledge what we've done wrong. I'm not a Democrat, but I'm just saying, anybody, if you want to move forward, you have to acknowledge when you were wrong. But that's what we need to do. That's what the Democrats need to do. That's what Hillary Clinton needs to do. That's what Perez, Ellison, whoever. Ultimately, people do need to understand this. We don't know how long Perez or Ellison will last, because the Democratic Party has a habit of just switching people out of that committee chair. People are worried about funds and funding. The truth of the matter is they are supposed to remain neutral until the general election anyway. Now, does that always happen? No, but I mean, there's other ways to get that, like that you can supersede the DNC to get funding, and just disproportionately from one Democratic candidate over the other. So, the cheating is going to be there, but you first need to create the image and the perception that it is possible that the Democratic Party establishment has a conscience, and that we can see the Democratic Party and the progressive Bernie Crat wing work together to bring people back in. Because right now you have lost 20% of your Democratic Party. You will not win, period, at all. There's not a chance that you're winning another election unless you get it together and show that you can bring in you will accept the progressives, you will work together with them, you will not allow for incremental change. It needs to be changed now, because there are people who just can't wait anymore. And if you want your jobs, to put it quite simply, if you want your jobs, you will stop playing this game and start taking these people seriously, because they're going to get their democracy back with or without you. And yeah, it'll be harder to do it without you. But hey, we're dealing with Donald Trump, Republicans talking about, putting Betsy DeVos and Ben Carson in charge of things that they should not be in charge of. So at this point, we're willing to do whatever we have to ensure that we have a progressive party. Now, whether you want to be that progressive party or not is entirely up to you. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, share, and always remember, find your balance.